Hello everyone. Uh, Welcome to JiraCon 22. I'm Sarika Dalal and I have Ajay along with me, and we are going to talk about Migrate Atlassian Connect Express app to Forge platform. I will start with our quick introduction. So I'm working with Trundl as a lead Atlassian engineer. I have expertise in Atlassian app development for Jira Server and Cloud platform. Uh, I really feel good that I'm hosting this session for all of you. Thank you for joining. Handing over it to you, Ajay, for your quick introduction.
Hi, thanks, Sarika. So great to meet you all online and great to be participating in JiraCon 22. I'm Ajay. Just to introduce, I'm Ajay. I work with U26 and Atlassian Silver Marketplace partner. And we have been using Forge for the last 1 year, and great to share my experience today. Over to you, Sarika.
Thanks, Ajay. Yes. So guys, today we are going to talk about migration of an app from ACE to Forge platform. So before starting that, let's have a quick introduction to Atlassian Apps framework. Cloud apps are developed differently than the server apps. So to develop cloud platform app, we have multiple framework options which help in creating secure and full-featured app quickly. There are three main frameworks are there which we use to develop cloud apps. So first one is Atlassian Connect Express, which we call sometimes ACE framework. Second option which we have here is Forge platform, that is the that Atlassian launched recently. And the third option which we have here is external integration with Auth 2.0 or other authentication method which we can use. So in today's we are going to talk about only Atlassian Connect framework and Forge platform. Now, after a quick introduction with all of the framework, let's understand each framework in detail. So what is Atlassian Connect Express? So this is a distributed app technology for extending Atlassian applications such as Bitbucket, Cloud, Jira, and Confluence. This framework provides a Node.js toolkit for building app by using a ACE framework. We can develop a web application that can operate remotely over HTTP and can be written with any programming language. So this is all about Atlassian Connect Express. Now let's talk key features of ACE. First one which we have here is we can get a control of the tech stack and infrastructure because it's a completely web code. So we have a complete control on a tech stack, infrastructure, where how you want to write your which technology you want to use, where you want to host this thing. Everything, the control is in our hand. We can use our own security implementation and authentication. We can use any external cloud provider to host our app like AWS, Google Cloud, Heroku, which we can use. The important thing which I like personally, Atlassian Connect Express, we can use a Node.js Express framework which allow us to use routing, middleware, and templating within a Node.js environment. So we can create a good architecture by using this framework. Let's talk about how the Atlassian Connect Express framework works here. So when we are talking about Atlassian apps, so for the end user, your add-on should not appear as a different application, but it should integrate it as a part of Atlassian application itself. It should not look as two applications we are using. One is the Atlassian application and second one is so this two should be properly integrated. Once your add-on is registered with the Atlassian application, feature are delivered from the UI. It means all of the feature that we are going to add in our app that are delivered from the front end, and front end will interact with the backend application of Node.js, and that backend application will integrate with Jira or other Atlassian system by using REST API or webhooks. So that's the integration. That's how the Atlassian Connect Express framework works. So here, basically, our REST API and Atlassian REST API will integrate with each other in the backend. So like that, Atlassian Connect framework works. So it's basically API integration internally, which makes our Atlassian Connect Express app to which makes Atlassian Express app too powerful as compared to other frameworks. So let's talk about now what is Forge. Now we have explored Atlassian Connect Express. Now let's talk about Forge. So Atlassian announced Forge, a new cloud app development platform, at the beginning of 2020. Now we have noticed like already Atlassian Connect Express is available. Why we need Forge? So what is the reason behind creating a second platform which is similar to Forge, which is similar to Connect? Now to understand that, first we have to understand Forge is Atlassian's serverless platform that differ from Connect with this feature. Like the main difference is Forge is a serverless platform. It means we don't have to take care anything in the infrastructure side. When we are building an app, we can simply write our code and Atlassian will take care about the infrastructure thing. This platform is powered by AWS Lambda. Since applications are hosted on the Atlassian side, so vendor bear much lower initial cost. So the difference will be you just write your own code. Atlassian itself will take care of security and infrastructure things. So that's why the cost of the vendor will be lower as compared to Connect. Okay, now let's talk about key features of. So here we can say when we are talking about build app, not infrastructure. As I told you, when we are writing anything in the code, we have to just think about the code side. We don't have to take care of the infrastructure thing. So with that, within a minute we can within a minute platform will take care of your security, computer and storage, everything. The next feature which we have here is maintenance and maintenance simplified. It means we can keep apps customization up to date without any heavy lifting. So we can customize anything without restarting multiple times. So it will take Atlassian Forge itself will take care of that. So without any heavy lifting, we can do a maintenance and we can do a maintenance here. The complete development toolkit. So if we will do a walkthrough from Forge app development, so you will notice like from testing to deployment, it provides everything. It provides functional as a service platform and DevOps required covered. So it provides everything which we need to do a test and complete development toolkit it will provide. Next thing which we have here is achieve more with extensibility. It means run apps in Jira and Confluence anytime. Okay, the next option which we have here is share your apps quickly and easily. Use the developer console to distribute your apps to users. So it is very easy. So this features we will understand in detail when we will have a migration session. So now let's understand what is the basic difference between Atlassian Connect versus Atlassian Forge. Why we are why in JiraCon we are presenting this session of migration, because the main difference is when we are using Atlassian Connect, we have to take care of our hosting things. In UI extendability, Forge provide more option as compared to Atlassian Connect. In Forge, we can create a managed REST API and JavaScript API, while in Atlassian Connect, we can simply create REST and JavaScript APIs. In app languages, we can see in Forge, this is serverless Node.js function we can write. And while in Atlassian Connect, we can use any language, optional framework for Node.js and Java. For authentication and data implementation, Forge provide built-in authentication, sandboxing, and development environment. While in Connect, you have a complete control over auth and data implementation. For distribution, Forge provide Forge and Atlassian Connect both are capable where we can create our app for the team and for the marketplace. Or for the compatibility level, Forge is compatible with Jira and Confluence only, but Atlassian Connect is compatible with Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket. So this is the main difference here. So if you remember in JiraCon 21, I have already covered a detailed session about Atlassian Connect, that is Atlassian Connect, and that session is available on Trundl YouTube channel. If you want to know more about it, you can refer that. Now let's talk about walkthrough of existing Connect app. Here, if you will see, I have already written. Let me just share my screen. Yeah, so as of now, you can see I have shared my code. In this, I'm using Atlassian Connect Express framework. This is a simple feedback app that I have already. This app is running. I have installed this app in my Atlassian Cloud instance. And before starting the code walkthrough, let me show you the code, how the app. Okay, 1 second, I will share the complete screen. Yeah, so as of now, you can see here, I have already uploaded my app here. The app name is feedback form. Here you can see all the details about the app are added. After that, you can see this is the architecture of this particular app which I have hosted. Now you can see in the Atlassian Connect JSON file, I have added few modules. So I will walk you through first all the module, what this app is going to do. Now I have uploaded an app here. Once the app is uploaded, you can see a feedback button on the top of the header. When I will click on that particular button, I can see a page which will give me an option where I can give a feedback to a system. Now the feedback which I am entering here, that is getting stored into my database. Once the database it is stored, we can see all the feedback in the same screen. To give a feedback here, I have given a simple pop-up button here called test, a feedback button, and I'm giving a name, email ID. So when I have submitted the feedback, you can see a second entry got created into my this table, and this all the information are getting stored into my database. Now I will walk you through the complete code how I have written, but I will give a quick details about this. Now, as you noticed, this is my Connect Express app code. So I will start first the important file which we have to add. First file which is there is Atlassian Connect.json file. This file will help us to connect our Node.js app with Atlassian. So whenever we upload the app, the Atlassian use this particular file to identify the name of the app, key of the app, base URL, authentication, what is the scope of this app, all the modules which we want to add in Jira. So that we have to add here. Right now, only one general page that I have added, that you can see it in the system top navigator bar. This is the location I have added. Now, when I will click on that button, it will redirect to this particular URL. After some time, I will tell you from where this URL it will read. Now, after the Atlassian Connect JSON file, the next important file which we have here is package.json. Now, inside this package.json file, I have written all the required dependencies. After that, all the required dependencies to run. Right now I'm using React.js for the front end. So to run that app, whatever the dependencies I need, I have added it here. Apart from that, I have written all the required script. So this script will help me to start my Node.js server. So whatever I want, when I want this Node.js server to start, what it should do, so that I have written in the script section. Now, this is the package.json. Here we are going to from here our Node.js server will start. When the server starts, which file it will read? Now, once the server starts, there is a config.json file. Now here I'm setting up the environment. When I'm talking about environment here, I'm talking about database. So when I'm starting my app, it will connect with the database. So connect with database, I have integrated DB host, port, username, password, database name, everything here. So whenever the server will start, it will read this config.json file, and from here it will create a connection with the database. So these three important files which we are using. Once our server starts, let me open the package.json file again. So you can see when our Node.js server start here. So to start the server, the command which I will use here, npm run local, because I'm using local environment. So whenever I will run this script, what it will do, it will set my node environment to local, and it will call npm start command. So when I'm calling npm start, it will call this particular script and it will trigger the app.js file here. Now inside the app.js file, you will notice I am calling the constructor of express loader class. Now in this express loader class, I have written all the required code to run the Node.js server. Now, all the required dependencies, import statement I have added here. Now, whenever the constructor will get called, it will call directly the setup express method, and it will set up the express engine. Now, here we are initializing app, add-on, port, we are reading it from there. We are registering all our view directory. View directory, it means where all the view files, JSX file we have kept. After that, all the rendering related things we have added. Then here we are setting up the environment. Is it local or development? Once the environment set up, we are setting the parsing limit, body parser, everything. After that, this is the line which is response. These two lines are responsible to create a table. So what I want, whenever my app start first time, install first time, so all the table will get created into my database. Now in this model package, I have created a table entries. So I will show you after this. So once it is read, once it is added here, we are sequelizing and we are syncing. So db.sequelize.syncing, we are using sequelize to sync. When after this command, our table will get created. If few of the columns are not present in the table, then it will do that. So this part will sync our table with the database table. Once the table got created, we are registering all of our routes. Routes is nothing, just a URL which we are going to trigger from front end. It will come till here. After that, we are starting our server. Once the server starts, you can see I have registered my model file, route file, everything. So first, let's understand the model file now. So here you can see a feedback form model. It means I am creating a table called feedback form. In that forms table, I have created two columns, client key and the value. Client key, it means which Jira instance data it is, and in the value I'm using a JSON and I'm storing the feedback detail in the JSON. Now this is about the model file. Now let me show you a view file which I am using. So here I am using feedback.jsx file. You can see this particular file, that this particular page that you are viewing, that is coming from feedback.jsx file. Now how this rendering is happening. So as I told you, whenever we are clicking on the feedback button from the general page, it will redirect to this particular URL. Now where this URL is registered, so this URL is registered into my route file. Now what we are doing, one second. Yeah, so as of now, what you can see, whenever we are clicking feedback from URL, it will come into my main.js, and from here we are rendering feedback.jsx file. So the flow will be when I am clicking on the feedback button, it will come into main.js and it will render the feedback.jsx file. Now if you see the feedback.jsx file here, we are calling two API. First one to get all the data which is there in the database, and second one to create the API. Now for that, what we have did, we have created a separate routing file, feedback form routing. Now here you can see I have added all the required thing to route. Now router.post create feedback. This API will help me to create an entry into my database. While get feedback by client, it means I want to get all the feedback for that particular client. So router.get feedback by client method I am calling from a front end. Now when I will call this method from route, what it will do, it will, let's suppose if I want to create any feedback, so there is a controller class that we have written. In that we are calling this create feedback method, and whatever the data front end is passing, client key and a value. So in the whenever the request will come to front end, it will give us the client key. With that, from front end we are passing the value, means feedback value, and after that from the feedback controller we are passing only this particular feedback form data to feedback form service, and this feedback form service is integrating with the Postgres service, and Postgres service is sending the response to feedback service, and feedback service will return the response to controller, and from controller it will reach out to route, and from route again the data will add it to front end. So this is the flow we have. So this is all about Atlassian Connect Express app. Now in the next session, Ajay will explain us how we can migrate this thing.
Yeah, so let me start sharing the screen.
Yeah.
Right, I hope My screen is visible, Sarika?
Yes, you are. Your
Okay,
screen.
so thank you, Sarika, for taking us through the Connect Express app. And I'll get started how to approach porting this Connect app into Forge, right? So before we get started, an announcement that if you have any questions, feel free to drop in the Q&A section uh, for this particular presentation. So as I introduced, we have been working on Forge for more than a year now, and we have seen the platform evolve, right? Right from the beta release to now into general availability, and with Forge now approaching feature parity with Connect. So the agenda for this particular presentation. So before we get started looking into the code base, I want to talk a bit more on the Forge architecture from a security perspective. I mean, Sarika has covered the basics with respect to the difference between Forge and Connect. We'll go a bit more into the Forge architecture from a security perspective. And then we'll talk about how do you migrate the code from a Connect to Forge. We'll also look into using the Forge CLI, because the Forge CLI helps you to host the code which you have developed locally into the Atlassian infrastructure, right? And we can also make use of the Forge tunnel for debugging purposes. At this point, I would also like to introduce Vite. Vite is a new front-end development platform which would help you to perform debugging as well as using the hot module reload feature, which is really cool, and I will show it in the demo. Finally, we'll wrap up looking at the developer Atlassian Developer Console to check how to monitor the Forge app metrics, and with that we'll wrap up the session. So continuing on, as you see here, for this talk, I would like to talk on the Forge security and trust model of Forge. For a detailed explanation, you can have a look at the Atlassian documentation, which is like very well written, and you will have all the details of how to get started with Forge there. So as you know, Connect is baked into the cloud version of Jira and Confluence. However, Forge is implemented separately, right? So this separate implementation allows Forge to be integrated into any Atlassian products. So if you see, Forge now supports Compass, right? Forge will very soon support Bitbucket. So with the separate implementation of Forge, they're able to integrate into the newer Atlassian products. With Connect apps, developers were responsible for managing the hosting of their apps. But with Forge, developers simply need to use the Forge CLI, with which they can host it in the Atlassian infrastructure. So Atlassian Forge apps are essentially a bundle of functions that are executed to responses to events, and Atlassian entirely takes care of hosting it, right? So this makes Forge app extremely reliable because the entire hosting, compute, and storage is provided by the infrastructure, which is an important factor for getting customer trust. Forge apps can contribute to the UI by responding to user events. So whenever you make an events, it will in turn call the node runtime, which invokes the Lambda function, which can in turn call external APIs, right? Or it can call internal APIs wherein it can access Atlassian products and services. So from a security perspective, for the customer, whatever is highlighted in red is what makes a customer nervous, right? And how does Atlassian address this? I mean, they basically bring in the concept of permits, right? So all the ingress, outgress things basically are specified in the manifest file. So if you had a look at the code base of Connect Express, you would see the read permission, write permission, whereas Forge has very granular permission. You need to whitelist certain endpoints which you need to read and write. So this way the customer has total control as to what the application is doing. Moving on. So here, if you have to get started with porting the Connect app, so an app's evolution from Connect to Forge consists of a series of 4 stages, where each stage reflects a greater degree of Forge adoption. The process begins with stage 0, which is fully on Connect. I mean, as we have Sarika's Connect Express app, which is fully on Connect, followed by optional but recommended steps, which leads to stage 4. And stage 4 is like a fully managed application where, I mean, Atlassian takes care of the compute and the data. So in our example, we would be creating a stage 4 Forge application, which would make use of Atlassian hosted compute and data. That is because, I mean, as a fresh app, you can always directly migrate to stage 4. But if it's like a app on the marketplace and you need to transition, you can follow this recommended approach from moving from stage 1 right up to stage 4. Now we'll also have a look at the Forge CLI, and this diagram gives a very clear picture of what happens internally when you invoke the Forge CLI. So right, so the Forge CLI has 2 aspects. One is the deployment aspect, and the second is the invocation aspect. Right. So whenever you run the Forge deploy command, what happens internally is that it invokes certain Forge services, which basically takes your entire application code, links it, does some checks, and it basically queues it through an SQS so that it gets deployed onto the Lambda. It gets provisioned on the Lambda. I mean, there are some queues involved here to make sure that the rate limiting things are addressed internally. Now, looking from a invocation aspect, whenever there is browser events or user clicking on certain UI aspects of the app, it actually in turn invokes the Forge services, which calls the respective app's Lambda function. So Lambda function basically has, depending on the permission scheme of the app, you can make external calls or call internal Atlassian Jira product APIs. You get the data. The data basically gets back to the Forge services where it gets rendered. So you might be using a custom UI. You could be using the Forge UI kit. So that in turn basically gets rendered back to the browser. There's another interesting command where with Forge CLI, which is the Forge tunnel, and Forge tunnel allows you to do a lot of cool things, right? So as you know, Forge has a lot of functions which runs on the Atlassian infrastructure, but with Forge tunnel, you can get to run them locally on your laptop or your machine. So all requests which you make gets tunneled back to your machine, and whenever you make changes in the Forge code, it gets rebuilt instantly and deployed locally. So the other thing is, like, when you're using a custom UI, the front end, all the static files of the custom front end is basically being served from your computer rather than being fetched from S3. One more added bonus which you get is, I mean, you get all the logs locally in your local console rather than having to have a look in the developer console. And how do you get started with the Forge tunnel? You need to make sure that you have Docker running on your machine, and you need to invoke the Forge tunnel. So I'll show these things in the demo. So before getting into the demo, I would also like to introduce at this point Vite. So what is Vite? Vite is a next generation front-end tooling, and it's really cool, right? So if you have used front-end with Webpack, you know how long it will take to build, right? So the bigger the application, the more time it takes to build. And Webpack has a lot of configurations. I mean, understanding the configuration files itself is a tedious task, a loader for everything, and a lot of configurations. But with Vite, there's not so much. And the best thing about Vite is it's very, very fast, right? But can you do more with Vite? I would say, I mean, the hot module replacement which you can use with Forge is really cool. So what you do is like while doing development, you can actually run the dev server, and the dev server you can connect to Forge tunnel. So what happens internally is like whenever you make changes to the modules, so it replaces only those components without affecting the other components, which means that the state of the app is preserved. So if you have a very complex interaction scenario, and I mean you want to make certain changes, you make the change, and Vite does the hot reloading without affecting the state of the application, and that's how I mean it's you can actually do very quick development process with this particular scenario. Now, let me get to the code base. So before getting started with the code, let's also have a look at, how do you get started with Forge, right? So Atlassian has a very well documented page here. So if you go to developer.atlassian.com platform Forge, you have a getting started page. This basically tells you how to get started. So in my case, I'm using Windows. So how do you basically go about installing the Forge CLI, right? And I mean, what are the prerequisites here? So you can get started with that. And you see all the basic commands which are available within the CLI. So the Forge login is basically to get started. I mean, you need to log in, provide the credentials. And once you log in, you can invoke the Forge create command. So Forge create basically provides you a lot of boilerplate code to get started developing an app. So be it Jira, be it Confluence, be it Jira Service Management, be it Compass, there are predefined boilerplates available for certain modules which you can straight away invoke. Forge deploy command is, I mean, once you have done with the development, you can deploy your application on the Atlassian infrastructure, and this is the command to do it, Forge deploy. Forge install actually associates your cloud instance with the application. So it registers your Forge application with the specific instance of your cloud instance, right? And we'll also have a look at Forge tunnel. So I mean, Forge tunnel helps you to do hot reload changes and all that stuff. So let's get started with looking at the code base. Now, I think the most important file which you need to have a look at is the manifest.yml. So Sarika had shown you the Atlassian connect.json, and manifest.yml is the equivalent, Forge equivalent of Atlassian Connect. And we see here, I mean, we are making use of the Jira global page, the same module which Sarika was using, and we are using the resolver. So resolver is an important concept when you work with static UI. So in our case, the entire UI is developed using a custom UI, Forge custom UI component, and we are specifying the resource here. And the static component of the code basically communicates with the runtime via the resolver. We'll get into the code base and show exactly how it works. And these pieces are very specific for the development purpose. You won't have this during production. So this specific stuffs I have for making sure that Vite works along with the Forge tunnel. And you see the permission schemes. I mean, Forge has a very granular permission scheme. So in the presentation had referred to permits, and I mean, you need to provide permissions at a very granular level, and that's how Forge takes care of the security aspects. Now, we had a look at the package. Now, moving into the code base, first thing would be to have a look at the static code, because this is the entire ported code of Sarika as a custom UI. And now, if you have a look at the package.json file, we are using several Atlassian React components, and you see the bridge here. This is very specific with respect to Forge. And the other big difference is I'm using Vite instead of the create React app default scripts, right? The other thing which I would like to show is, the feedback app here, if you go to the definition, I'm using a lot of, it's a simple React application. So you're using use effects, and this is basically the main thing where it gets rendered, right? So, I have the header, I have the model to create the feedback, and I also have the invoke command. So this is interesting. So whenever I need to store data into the Forge storage, I will call the invoke command, which is basically a utility function provided by the Forge bridge. So the data is goes as a JSON into the set table values, and in the index, which is basically the resolver file, the payload basically gets you obtain the payload from the custom UI and set the value into the Forge storage, right? So resolver is an important concept when you keep working with a custom UI. Apart from that, it's pretty straightforward. Unlike Sarika, I'm not making use of any routes here because it's a very simple application. But now let me show you how do you get this app deployed, right? So this is my root folder, right? I have my files here. So the first step would be to go into the static folder, which is the feedback form here. And the first step would be to get it compiled. So the step to compile it would be npx Vite build. And it's pretty fast as compared to Webpack. It will hardly take a few seconds. I would say it is in the magnitude of like 3 to 5 times faster than Webpack build, right? So I have my list getting generated. To deploy, once you have done everything, the command would be to do a Forge deploy command, right? So I have already deployed. So if I show you my installation, okay, I'm not in the root folder, so that's my mistake. Yeah, so there you see, I've already deployed it in my cloud instance. Now let us get started with using the Forge tunnel, right? So for using the Forge tunnel, the first step would be to run, make sure that a Docker is running. Once Docker is running, you would run the Forge tunnel command. And let me also make sure that I'm running the Vite server. So I have the first tunnel getting started, and there you have Vite is running now. So this port number 5173, I think I already have in my manifest file. Yeah, 5173. Yeah, my Forge tunnel is also running. And let me show you a quick demo of how do you do hot reloading, right? So from a UI perspective, you see feedback description is there. Let's change it to say JiraCon feedback. JiraCon. Right. So I just need to save the file, and without even reloading the web app, you see the change. So this is the hot reload feature of Vite, which is really cool. Now getting to the final slide. We'll wrap up today's session by looking at what we all perform. So you saw how a Connect app could easily be ported to Forge platform using the sample application which was shown by Sarika. We also had a look at the Forge architecture and the fundamental change with respect to Connect, which is like Forge platform is a hosted solution by Atlassian, and Forge has the ability to take care of authorization, authentication, storage, and compute. So Forge helps developers worry less about security, and customers can have more trust in apps performance, security, and handling of their data. We also saw that Forge provides various environments, dev environment, staging, and great policies and great developer experience. So though there are still some concerns with Forge with respect to feature parity with Connect, the Atlassian team, especially the Forge team, is doing a great job to bridge the gap. So we hope you all enjoyed this session for JiraCon, and hope to see you next year. So I'll hand it over to Sarika for the conclusion.
Yeah, thank you, Ajay. We enjoyed a lot this session, and I hope this session is a good learning platform for you guys who are looking for this type of migration. So thank you for being with us in the JiraCon and for this session. So thank you.